So I think, with respect to that,
thank you.
Let's get
absolutely,
going.
Absolutely. So I'll just do a very brief introduction, and then I'll start. Welcome everyone to a wine evening with a difference. For starters, we have on the cards an interaction with the founder and CEO of Sula Vineyards, Rajeev Samant, who we don't see here very often. Sula has been making news from the start, and even more lately. So I hope this conversation would be interesting for all of you, particularly since he's flown down specially to Bangalore for this. I prefer to call it a conversation, Rajeev, rather than an interview, despite my being a journalist, because I'd really like this to be like a free flow change of information, ideas and knowledge. I know Rajeev is really keen to chat, get some feedback from you, then there will be a tasting. India is on the cusp of a major coming of age, if you will, in the big world of wine. There's a lot of international interest in India as a country, and its largest, most progressive wine company, we'll discover more about it very soon, should be of interest to us all because it's changing. The wine world is changing, and they are actually leading the way in a lot of things which I think a lot of us, because there are all wine lovers in the room, may not be fully aware of. So this is an opportunity to actually hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So there's a slight change in the format which was shared to you earlier. The wine tasting and the conversation will now be split into two parts. I'll hit pause midway through my questions and our chat, and then Rajeev and the Sula team will take over and lead you through a tasting of the first few wines, which has got some very unusual creative food paired with it, which has been conceptualized by the very creative chef of the Oberoi, Chef Anirban Dasgupta. It's absolutely taken us aback just how much detail he put into it and how much work. Then we will resume the conversation, and at the end of that, the second part of the tasting will take place, and I will step off the stage. Karan Vasani, the COO, will step onto the stage, and we'll talk about the wine. And right at the end, after this thing is over, we are going to have a Q&A. So please jot down any comments, any questions, anything at all you might have thought of during the course of this conversation and the tasting, and I'd be happy to facilitate Q&A with Rajeev and his team. So let me begin. Rajeev Samant really needs no introduction. Is room full of people who are wine lovers anyway, and wine professionals, people from the industry. So I will just very briefly reiterate that he began Sula in 96?
First vines planted in 96, but first wine made in 99.
First wine made in 99, first wine in the market in 2000.
That's right.
And there were two wines, the Chenin and the Sauvignon Blanc. 25 years, which may sound like a lot, but when you consider countries like France, and we have Consul over here from France, we're taking baby steps still, but at a galloping rate. Sula has come a very long way in those 25 years, and I hope to explore some parts of those journeys, and in fact, the raison d'etre behind Sula's journey and Rajeev's thinking now and for the future. We are also very fortunate to have with us Karan Vasani, COO of Sula, who has spent over 10 years with the company. And many of the wines you will taste today are indeed, as I like to say, his babies in his earlier avatar as winemaker for Sula. There are many key members of the Sula team who've also come down especially for this event, and you will meet them after this is over. And let me just say, this coming together and chance to chat, exchange views and taste at this very special event is very exciting for me, and I hope it is for all of you. Welcome to Bangalore, Rajeev. Shall we begin?
Thank you, Ruma. Absolutely.
Okay, so I have some questions, as I should have. And so let me start with what we said. You started very small. Your own holdings, 5 acres in 1996. You produced your first wine, which was out in the market in 2000. So that was 5 acres. Now you are, with your own vineyards, have 2,800 acres, which is a large amount. And you have over 50 labels. That's quite an achievement in a very, very short time, I would say. And you have, I think Sula, a lot of you may know this, but Sula passed 1 million cases in volume sales in 23. So that's no mean achievement. Rajeev, what has been your learning over these 25 years? You've been a pioneer, though there were others who came before you, but in a way Sula has been the biggest and the most progressive. You've been pioneers. So could you walk us through a little bit about maybe a few things that marked those 25 years?
Absolutely. So first, I'd just like to say thank you, Ruma, for organizing this amazing tasting here today. And I want to thank all of you for attending, wine lovers, distinguished guests. Each of you has taken the time out of your schedule to be here this evening, and I hope that we aren't going to let you down. I want to thank you, and I also want to apologize a bit, because Bangalore is our second largest market after Mumbai, and I don't spend enough time here. Life is extremely busy. It's just gotten a little bit busier after 24 years of being a nice, cozy, private family affair. We have become now a listed company. So now I sit before you not only as the founder and CEO of Sula, but also as the CEO of a listed company. And there must be some of you here who have experience in dealing with the National Stock Exchange, with SEBI, etc., etc. Life has changed and has become a little bit more hectic than what I'm used to. So Bangalore has been off my radar for the last couple of years, but now we are definitely going to redouble our efforts. This is a city of very refined tastes and a lot of wine lovers, and we've not been doing enough. So this is also my promise to you that we're going to be doing much more activities in Bangalore. Some of them centered on our vineyard, very close outside Bangalore, just about less than 2-hour drive, just off the Bangalore-Mysore highway. I'm referring to Domain Sula, which Karan has helped me build. And we also have our new chief winemaker, ever since Karan stepped up to COO. Gorakh Gaikwad has taken over as our chief winemaker. And Gorakh is the one who's really single-handedly brought up Domain Sula. The wines being produced today in Domain Sula, which are the wines you get in Karnataka, are not second to the wines being produced in our winery in Nashik. And that's really a tribute, because it's a much smaller operation. Some of the grapes are trucked in from far away as well. Some of the white wine grapes come in from Nashik, etc. But I got to say, every time we do a tasting competition between our two wineries, we have to do that internally. I got to say that most recently, Domain Sula is coming out on top in about half the wines we taste, and the Nashik winery comes out on top in about half the wines we taste. So that's just something, that's a little introduction. So yes, 25 years, and wow, what a ride it's been. And as you said, it was very small beginnings, very humble aims at that time. I was studying in California. I'm sure some of you know this story. Decided to come back to India. Didn't know what I was going to do. So the story comes out that I came back to make wine. That's not exactly how it goes, because I had no clue. So I was that guy who worked in Silicon Valley, quit my job because I knew I didn't want to stare at a computer all day long, with a boss who I thought, I knew more than them. You know how all of you know exactly how that goes. And I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be my own boss. I want to find that thing. And it was just after the budget of 1991. So it was in late 1992, a long time ago, that I made that journey back. And I want to say, when I was on that airplane, I was feeling very lonely, because everybody was coming back from India to California. Nobody was going from California back to India at that time. My parents almost disowned me, especially when, we're a Bombay family at the end of the day, and I suddenly land up in Nashik, saw this small piece of land that my dad had, and he was trying to subdivide it into, small bungalows, etc. Total failure, flop show. Half the stuff we've done has been flop show. One thing that I did worked. So at that time, I realized that Nashik had an amazing climate, one of the most versatile agricultural and horticultural climates in the world. You're all aware that Nashik is the cradle of India's grapes. I'm not sure how many of you are aware that India is in one of the top 4 countries in the world in terms of table grape production. So India already had a big tradition of grape growing, but it was all table grapes. And when I'm saying table grapes, of course, I mean raisins and the Thompson seedless, etc., that you eat as a table fruit. So India, when I landed up, was 99.9% table grapes, 0.1% wine grapes. The rest of the world at that time was 95% wine grapes, 5% table grapes. So we had the agricultural heritage of grapes, but we did not have any cultural heritage of wine. So I land up there, I see all these grapes growing. I had started drinking wine. I must say it was something called Blush Zinfandel in California at that time. That was the first wine I tasted. I say, hey, why can't we make wine here if we're growing all these beautiful table grapes, we're exporting to Tesco's and et cetera, et cetera. So I said, I'm the guy who's going to try to do it. And all I wanted to do at that time was to make a fairly drinkable wine. I had tasted the wines that were already there. I didn't like them. Of course, that's a personal choice. I'm sure there were those who, I felt that it was missing something and I felt we could do better. So I found somebody in California to help me. I said, look, do you think we can make a decent drinkable wine here? That's all I set out to do. There were no thoughts of million cases and public company and all that. And I met a really cool guy, Kerry Damsky, we acknowledge him here today, who said, sure, I'll help you. We can do a decent wine. I went to UC Davis, I asked them, I took some samples, I said, here's our climate, etc. Said, we think we can do it. And he said, look, I don't know if we'll win any medals, but I think we can do a decent drinkable wine. And I said, that's okay. Of course, later we won lots of medals, but that's another thing. So that's how it started 25 years ago. And then things have just grown. We got a lot of good luck along the way, a lot of hard work along the way, and here we are today.
So Sula's growth, as you know, inevitably is historically linked with the Indian wine industry. It's the largest by a mile, much more than a mile. But however, there are a lot of other wineries who are also trying to follow suit. But there seems to be, to me, a fair amount of uncertainty. Maybe they haven't really figured things out. So what do you feel? Because after all, wine is not like selling biscuits or soap. It's not a product like that. What do you feel that to develop the wine industry in India as a whole, what are the few things they need to think about, such as terroir, so many things, if you would just share a few insights?
So it's far from me to advise others on how they should be doing it. I can say a little bit about what we did and what worked.
Yeah.
When we started, all we wanted to do was to make a wine of quality, a wine of distinction and a wine of quality. So, we made India's first Sauvignon Blanc at that time. And again, I'll repeat that we had no aspersions in terms of quantity. And in terms of profits. We just wanted to make a decent wine. And we were very lucky. We were there at a time when there was not much competition. So we could do that and build it gently. We've always been pioneers. The other thing that we're always trying to do is, what next? Which grape do they say, for instance, which is a famous international grape, one of the top grapes, which is not being grown here yet? Why is it not being grown? Let's find the area where it will grow well. Let's do it. We are always, I could tell you the grapes and the wine that we have in development now. We have 4 or 5 different wines in development at various stages, either the import of the cutting, the putting into the quarantine vineyard, either it's going into the quarantine vineyard or it's going in situ, etc., etc. So there's always stuff in development. So we are never standing still. So this is our traditional welcome drink. So we have a very simple SOP at Sula. Once you enter the event, you're always served a glass of bubbles. Of course, it's something that's from all over the world. And this is a wine that we are so proud of, because this, some of you might not know, is India's first and only ever wine to win a gold medal at the IWC, the International Wine Competition of London. So this is a great conversation starter. So I hope that all of you thoroughly enjoyed the first sip of the Tropical Rosé.
Yeah.
So again, it's something else. We're always going in for competitions. We're benchmarking ourselves against the. I have a feeling today, life has really changed. Recently, this whole thing with venture capital and private equity. Sorry, not to say anything. I'm sure there are some financial types here as well. And this whole you open your phone, you don't open the newspaper anymore. You open your phone and you'll see some story about somebody who started with this and they've made it to that and all that.
Yeah.
And it sort of, it corrupts. So there's a lot of, a lot of emphasis on growing big really fast, but with shaky foundations. And then it all comes, sort of tumbling down. And that's the same kind of thing that's been happening even with our industry. Ours is something that requires, 25 years for us to reach this stage. A lot of people don't have that. And we also, it was a sort of a quieter, gentler time. We were able to do our things. It's taken us 25 years to grow from 4,000 cases to a million cases. Today, that's difficult. I think for a lot of people, unless you're willing to put a big fortune into it, very difficult to do. And some of the farmers who saw our success, now, there's no culture of wine consumption in rural Maharashtra. This is where this whole thing has started. You have 50 wineries that started in rural Maharashtra, 25 in rural Karnataka. In a lot of these families, no one in the family had ever tasted a drop of wine. I agree, I had only tasted Blush Zinfandel up until I started planting. But at least, I tried to understand the culture. I spent 7 years in California, so that's this thing. Here, in most of these families, no one has ever tasted wine, ever. But they say, we have great land, we're growing grapes, look over there, look at Sula, why can't we do it? Let's make wine. And if you see some of the examples, sometimes we should open a library of the labels that people came up with, some of these farmers came up with in those early years. The story is right there. You would have a bullock cart, which is, of course, very evocative, but then with a farmer, this thing with a whip, riding the bullock cart, etc., stuff like that, which didn't exactly evoke. So it's been tough. And I think it's going to require a second wave of people. If you look at California, etc., you will have people who made money in finance and real estate and what have you, and then they go into wine as a labor of love and they pump money into it, and that's the ecosystem required really to build something. This is not ground up. This is not people drinking wine from 1,000 years. So you can't expect that part of things. So it's going to have to be something like this. So perhaps there are those among you who are thinking about starting a winery. You know what we did? We got all the rules changed. That's made it so easy today to start a winery, and such a low tax environment. If you talk about Maharashtra and Karnataka, the two biggest wine markets, it's the tax on wine here is far, far, far cheaper than the tax on beer and spirits. And same in Maharashtra. That's what you have going for you. And you have beautiful land here, can grow beautiful grapes. Sometimes I just don't understand why it hasn't taken off in the way it has.
Maybe we need more people with your vision. But anyhow, so, we were talking about the awards, and congratulations. I was there in London when Sula won that 95 points, I believe. The Brut Tropical, and beautiful bottle. If you see, it's very beautifully designed. It's a lovely bottle. But still the perception by and large, and this is not about Sula necessarily, but as India as a country, is that we still have a way to go. So what do you think, and how do we go about changing that perception?
Sure, look, in some ways we're 1,000 years behind, right? In some ways we're 100 years behind. So there's a lot of work to be done to catch up. I always say, look at where we were 25 years ago. No one even thought that we would reach this stage where we are making wines of character, authenticity, and quality, and winning medals. So that's already something that India is doing that we didn't have 25 years ago, which is not a long time in the history of trying to create a wine industry, of trying to figure out which area grows the best Syrah, which grows the best Sauvignon, which is stuff that we've been figuring out over 25 years as well, which grows the best Cabernet Sauvignon. And today we are starting to figure it out. And I'm happy to say that Karnataka is, I would say, the spiritual home of Cabernet Sauvignon in India. Karnataka and South Maharashtra on the border, we share a border. So, it is going to take time. And today, we have, of course, we are in the global, sort of commerce space. We've got WTO. There's a lot of pressure for duties and tariffs to come down. Our distinguished guest here will be very aware of that. And so it makes it even a little bit more sort of difficult and on the edge. And how do you build something here and set it all up before the floodgates opened And that's going to be tough. I will say that right now. I mean, we do all enjoy a modicum of protection that is, I would say it's required to build an industry, especially from inexpensive imports. Once that starts to come down, it's going to get even harder. But, you know, it could happen. We are working hard to make sure we reach a certain level with our brand that makes us sort of an unassailable castle.
Yeah, on the same level. We look forward to that, really, I think. Another thing was, which was an interesting anecdote, which was something which Steven Spurrier told me. In the early 2000s, very soon after I think y'all had started, during an emerging markets conference in Paris, he said, it was a wine symposium of emerging markets. And somebody, he said, I think it was Pierre, who imports fine wines into China. And he, during his speech, said, in China, the light is amber. And you got up after that and you said, in India, the light is green. And he quoted this to me several times, and he said, you know, Rajeev Samant said that. But today I want to ask you, do you still believe the light is green, or what do we need to do to make it green?
I would say probably it's more like amber today. But at the time when I spoke to that audience in Paris, we were growing at 30-40% a year.
Yeah.
So obviously that was, the whole thing was colored. The green was colored with my green, you know, green is also my favorite color. So, but you know, definitely it's not that easy, and it's not that straightforward. If you look at the state restrictions, apart from Maharashtra and Karnataka, you're jumping through hoops all the time. It's like, you know, your shirt has been set on fire, the hoop's on fire, and you're trying to jump in. It's so difficult. The bureaucracy, and especially in case of excise, Alcobev, they just want to make it tough. And the ones who succeed are only the big incumbents, because they have, you know, they are entrenched in there. So if you're a startup trying to come up and do stuff like that, so difficult. So we have, you know, the growth has moderated. We're still looking at around double-digit growth. Sometimes you have domestic wine growing faster than imports. Other times you have imports growing faster than domestic wine. I would say that probably in the last couple of years, the imported wine segment has been growing a little bit faster. I don't know, we have Alok Chandra in the house as well here, who knows very well what's going on with imports. He's right in the middle of that. But just after COVID, you had the domestic wine industry growing like crazy. And probably a couple years before COVID also, you had the domestic industry growing like crazy. So there are cycles, it comes and it goes, but I do say that we are definitely very much in a growth stage. And you look at the rest of the world, and wine consumption is declining.
Absolutely.
Consumption, production are both declining. In India right now, consumption is increasing. It's still at a minuscule level, let's face it. Production is increasing. So for this point, we're in a better state, but there's so much work to be done just to maintain that.
Yeah, I completely appreciate that. So let's talk about something which I'm not sure, maybe some of you are aware of, is the whole rebranding that has taken place in Sula. They actually did a lot of work. From 2017, I think you started the Source labels, and then I think 2020, shortly after the COVID or during the COVID thing, you launched a Rasa, you relaunched it. So you had the wines, and then you decided to hide them away from the main Sula brand, which I thought was quite a decision to make, because Sula with its sun logo is so iconic and so entrenched in people's minds, and you suddenly decided you wanted to create something totally different. So why did you do it, and what has it achieved for you as a company?
So very good question. You know, you can't, a company that's growing big can't have always have one. Sorry, I just asked for the bottle of whatever we are drinking to be put up there so you can all take a look at the label.
It's so pretty.
You cannot be one thing, everything to everyone.
True.
You know, you launch something. We launched Sula in 1999, we made it. 2000, we sold our first bottle. By the time you reach 2015, there's a lot of people for whom it's mother's milk, no doubt. There's a lot of people who've moved on.
True.
And they might say, look, we started out, and for a lot of people in India, it's true that they started out wine with Sula. But now they've moved on and they're looking for other choices. So if you try to brand everything with Sula, it's not necessarily going to work. At some point, you have to start segmenting, and you got to give, let's say you want to make something with a lot more quality. You want to add French oak to it, expensive French oak, you want to age it for a year. Now your Sula brand is at 700, 800, 900 rupees. To make this wine and sell it, that wine's got to cost 1,500 bucks. Now to sell your Sula at 800 for 1,500 rupees, tough. So you have to come up with a whole new proposition, a whole new value proposition, a whole new proposition for the consumer. Hence we came up with Rasa for really high-end reds. We were looking at the way the reds were evolving, and we said we can do much better. But you can't do it on a mass basis. You can't just have rooms, buildings full of barrels. In India, barrels are a real luxury. You got to import them from France or from California, and you have to put them in temperature-controlled buildings with thick walls, being kept at 14 degrees day and night. Can you imagine what kind of energy consumption we're talking about, etc.? So, and then to build those out, and they take time, etc. So you can't have, for instance, our Shiraz Cabernet, which is India's #1 selling wine, period.
Yeah, the Sula.
The Sula Vineyards Shiraz Cabernet is still growing double digits. But if to jump above 1,000 rupees, not going to be so easy. You're going to lose some of your consumers. Far better than to launch a Source Cabernet at 1,200 rupees. It's our fastest growing wine today. It's growing at 50%.
Wow.
Sula Shiraz Cabernet is still growing at 10%. Some of the people who drink our Source series know it comes from Sula Vineyards. Others don't, and that's absolutely fine. It's like Volkswagen also owns Audi, and probably they own Porsche. I don't know. They own half the European wine industry. Toyota owns Lexus. I mean, you take the automaker case, and it's clear. You have to have your entry-level proposition and a differently branded high-end proposition, and also a differently branded low-end proposition. So not so many people might know we're the #1 sellers of port wine in India with our Port 1000.
It's not something you advertise a lot.
No, we don't advertise it at all. You're not going to taste it tonight. It costs 275 rupees a bottle.
Wow.
And we sell a couple 100,000 cases of it, but you're not going to find Sula anywhere on the label. And then with Rasa, we're talking about a proposition that's oak aged, that's the finest elevation of that grape in India, whether it's our Rasa Cabernet or our Rasa Syrah. You can't sell it at 800-900 bucks. It's going to be 1,500. And at Source, you're talking about solidly at 11, 12, 1,300 with a little different proposition, drier wines, a little bit more in the European way, artisanal without going to the 100% barrel treatment like Rasa. And that's just hit the spot.
I think it really has hit the spot. I think for a lot of people here, Rasa and the Source are what they would be drinking much more often than, I know personally I love the Source Rosé. It's been my favorite since whenever. And I think it's just brilliant. We have so many of them now. You are going to go through the tastings now, and you will taste a selection of the Source range as well as the Rasa range. But before I call Karan onto the stage and hand you over to Rajeev and Karan to do the tastings, I just wanted to add, I was told that your Source is the fastest growing new wine brand in India in the last 6 or 7 years across brands, and it's crossed 60% of the market share.
It's not crossed 60% of market share, but yes, it is the fastest growing and the most successful ever
in the premium category.
Premium Indian wine launch.
Yeah.
If you go back
the last
between
couple
1100
to 1500, it's like, so obviously there is this.
And the Source Grenache Rosé is our homage to Provence.
Yeah.
Because Provence has made rosé sexy. Rosé used to be a €2 and €3 wine 20 years ago, and suddenly it's a €100 wine.
Yeah.
And everybody's talking about dry, a full-bodied and yet delicate on the palate rosé made primarily from the Grenache grape. And guess what? Grenache loves Nashik. So we have the Grenache grape. We were trying to make a red and we said, why are we trying to do a red? Let's do a rosé. So we do have French consultants coming out. So I must say that we're not limited to Californian. We have people from the University of Bordeaux coming out to advise us, etc. So we have some expert knowledge on that. And that is today, I would say, India's finest rosé. And you know, Indian rosé going past the 1,000 rupee mark, etc., is something of note. And it's just going like this. So clearly there's a market for it. It's a dry rosé. It's done. We're learning. We're taking a leaf out of the book from all of these regions. And you know, I just felt that doing it under the Sula range, you've got the wines in Sula are purposely a little bit sweet, a little bit off dry for the general Indian palate. And then to come out with dry, characterizations as well in the portfolio doesn't make sense. So source is our homage to a more dry, more classic wine profile.
Okay, so you have your premium wines. There are a couple of super premiums in the market today by other producers. Is there a plan, Rajeev, for you to make a super premium?
Sure, I must say that our philosophy has always been that we still like to keep the wines affordable. You can call it mastige, maybe that's a term that's used a lot. And we want to produce that every wine that we produce needs to be the best priced wine for that quality. That's what we are looking at. So for us, we are not sure that the time for 4,000 rupee Indian wines has yet arrived. You know, to reach that stage, really your region needs a good 30, 40 years of development before you start going into that.
Correct.
That's the way I see it. Having said that, we are working on something. Of course, we're not going to be left behind. But you know, when you work on that, you're talking about this prestige thing where you're going to produce 100 cases.
Literally.
Right? And put it in the thing. So it's a little bit also, I won't say gimmicky, but you know, it's the thing to put you in the eye. It doesn't do anything to the business of a publicly listed company today looking for growth every quarter. It just gives you a little bit of a bump.
Well, thanks for that. We'll try and pump him a little more for information, right, as we go along. But at this point, I'm going to just take a break. I hope you've been enjoying the little bite-sized amuse-bouche which have been put with your wines on the table. And at this point, I'd like to invite Karan to join me. I'm going to step off while he guides you along with Rajeev through the tasting.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ruma.
This is what you need for the...
Thank you. Welcome, Karan. So,
thank you, Rajeev.
We're going to be starting out with the white selection.
Absolutely.
And we've got a couple wines here. Shall we start with the?
We start with the Sauce Chenin Reserve.
You want to tell us a little bit about what our thoughts were when we were making this wine?
Absolutely. So Chenin Blanc is India's favorite white wine grape. If there's one grape I would say that really loves our climate, it's Chenin Blanc. It's so versatile. And we do so much with Chenin. We do an off-dry wine, the Sula Chenin Blanc, which is India's highest selling Chenin Blanc. We do a late harvest. We are sparklings, the Tropical that you tasted earlier. The vast majority of the base for that is Chenin Blanc, over 80%. And we felt the time was right, the market was ready for a more serious expression of Chenin Blanc, something that had a bit more character, that was aged and fermented in oak, that was drier and more serious. And about a year and a half ago, we decided to pull the trigger and try and do a Sauce Chenin Reserve. And I think the first vintage itself, we've done very well. We were delighted that we won a silver medal at the Concours Mondial de Brussels, a very, very prestigious international wine competition. And it's just a delightful wine.
So, you know, we were just talking about this, that what can we offer with the sauce? And one thing I want to say, so these wines, a lot of you will not have tasted these wines before. And I'm hoping that there's going to be a lot of very pleasant surprise in this room. We felt that in order to do formal tastings like this, we really need to have something to show. So today we are here with something really to show and knock you out. So the Chenin Reserve, you know, our winemakers were always after me that I'm RS in Sula. We need a serious Chenin. A lot of our consumers find our regular Chenin a little bit too sweet and too simple. Now I want to put it in perspective. Our Sula Vineyards Chenin Blanc is India's #1 selling white wine. So just to put it in perspective, that there's a lot of people out there who love the Chenin Blanc. But we did feel that, look at the people in this room. You've moved on in terms of sophistication. And we need to have a really high-class dry offering. And Chenin Blanc loves India. And so this is our homage to Chenin Blanc, dry, oak-aged. Started with small batches. I'm happy to say that every year the batch increases nicely. We have Gorak Gaikwad out there, and I want to say that I'm tasting this wine today, and I love it. Of course, I'm a fan of our own wines. But if you just see, this is something unexpected coming out of India. It's a high quality, high class white wine. And getting a silver medal, again, this is the only Indian wine to win any medal so far at Concours Mondial. I'm sure a lot of you here know Concours Mondial, and I'm really happy that this wine got this. So a little bit on tasting notes, maybe?
Sure. So dry, of course, you get the complexity from the oak, just a little bit of a hint of spice, and you get citrus, you get pear, and then this wine, as it ages, will develop a little bit more vanilla, almost almond notes. So evolves really well. About 2 years in bottle is great for this.
So how many here, if I could have a show of hands, have not tasted this wine before? So the vast majority of this audience, hi Abhijit, and that's exactly what we thought, and that's what we wanted to rectify today. So I'm actually really happy about that we are tasting you on something really new, something you hadn't tasted before. MRP of this wine is approximately 1,200 rupees, but that's before, of course, your friendly retailer. If you get a box of 6 or whatever, I'm sure they do special things for you. But so, very affordable, and to my mind today, I feel this is the best white wine being produced in India today. Our job now is that some of our clients who are stuck on Sula wines that we've been producing since 25 years. It's 25 years now since we launched our first Chenin Blanc. Some of them need to move and upgrade to the Source series on their wine list. So that's always a conversation that's going on, because there starts to be a mismatch between the consumers coming into, especially high-end 5-star hotels, the upper crust, as well as high-end standalones. You have a mismatch sometimes with the traditional buyer is still buying things that they were buying 15 years ago, but the person coming in, the wine drinker, is looking for something fresh. So how do you all feel about that wine? Something special. And that's what the wine looks like. And just a word on the label, the source. There's a reason for that. It sounds like very pithy, the source. But that is also, we feel that this wine was produced in Nashik and comes from really the source of India's premium wine. It's India's first premium wine region. You can say that's really been defined as a region and got a GI today from India. And we have also redeveloped our original winery, which became too small for us, into a beautiful resort called The Source. So it all comes together very nicely, and the graphic that you have on the label is actually a representation of the way that building, that repurposed heritage winery resort, you can say boutique resort, now looks, and that's how come The Source. So any comments here? Okay, we'll talk about it later in the Q&A and the mingling. So what's our wine number 2?
So we move to the Chardonnay. So this is our Dindori Reserve Chardonnay, the queen of whites.
We have tasting buckets here for anyone who needs, but we strongly encourage you not to use them at all. They should be dry at the end of the evening, unless you're driving. That will be the mark of a successful evening and tasting. So yeah, you were starting on the Dindori Chardonnay.
Yes, so the queen of whites, something that took a while in coming, but we've been doing the Chardonnay now for about 6 or 7 years, and it's very quickly become India's best Chardonnay. We do it in a bit of an approachable style, rich, round, creamy. It goes through a full malolactic fermentation. We want it, when we looked at Chardonnay and what consumers expect from Chardonnay, they expect richness and creaminess. The Indian palate is not looking for Chablis or is not geared towards Chablis-esque Chardonnays.
Yet, I'm sure there's those who are.
Absolutely.
Listen, we have French luminaries in the house, so we have to be diplomatic with what we say on that front.
Absolutely. So just like
So you're saying they are looking for Montrachet more than Chablis, okay. Fair.
Absolutely. So I think just the way the Chenin Blanc Reserve came after the Chenin, another Chardonnay will probably eventually come. But this was just to get the Indian public introduced to Chardonnay. And Chardonnay for us was a stepping stone, because till then we were using it only for our sparkling base, and then we wanted to do a still wine, and this was a few years in the making. But we're really happy with how it's come out. Very varietally correct. You've got apple, you've got pear, you've got citrus, a little bit of honey, and just a little bit of complexity from the oak. And again, in this wine, like with the Source Chenin, we don't want to make oak bombs. We don't want wines where only the oak speaks, and there's no fruit and there's no terroir. So the oak is balanced. There's a little bit of oak used judiciously just to complement the wine.
Yeah, so I would say in terms of oak, Chardonnay is called a winemaker's wine. And the reason for that is it's the perfect template with which you can do so many different things. You have a texture at its base, but in terms of, Sauvignon Blanc jumps out at you from the bottle, even Chenin can, etc. Chardonnay doesn't do that. It takes on whatever, it's a blank canvas and whatever the winemaker wants. So we decided to go for American oak with our Chardonnay because, Chardonnay in the Napa style is world famous, obviously, doing a lot of things there. I got to say here, I got to confess that American oak is also a little bit more cost effective than French oak. So with the Source Chenin Reserve, we've gone more French. With the Dindori Chardonnay, we've gone almost 100% American oak. And once again, a couple medals. Paris Wine Cup, gold medal in 22. India Wine Awards, of course, with that's like our backyard, so that's a different matter. But bringing in the medals, nice round. You can feel the oak without it being overwhelming. How many people here have not tasted the Dindori Chardonnay yet? So more people have tasted the Dindori Chard than have tasted the Source Chenin Reserve. So third wine, today my preference is the Source Chenin Reserve. I'm okay to say it. You can have favorites, it's fine. When you have 30 wines, you want to know. And you know what? It changes every vintage and almost every month. Something develops differently. So, we'll do the latest bottling and I'll say, hey, this is my favorite right now. Then I'll taste something else 2 months later and that will be my favorite. But I got to say that in India, I mostly drink Shudder, white and rosé. So when I'm traveling in Europe, etc., I'm drinking only red. But when I'm here, the climate-wise, now Bangalore, of course, today is delightful. Yesterday night was 21 degrees, and that's beautiful red weather. But in general, we've all seen the heat wave over the last couple of months, and we want to invite all of you to drink massively chilled whites and rosés in a heat wave. It goes as well or better than beer. And so we come to the rosé that we would say that you should drink in the heat wave. Perfect antidote. And this is the Source Grenache Rosé. I was alluding to this wine a little bit earlier. This is our homage to Provence, you can say. Rosé has become sexy across the world. You have, Hampton Water, and you have, of course, it all started with Whispering Angel. We have them to thank for this. And it's just created a whole new category and more things to make people spend their hard-earned, discerning money on, apart from just red and white. And I'm very pleasantly surprised and happy to see that now airlines have started offering rosé on the flights, and I'm just wondering why it's taken them so long. So British Airways has a tie-up with Whispering Angel. Emirates now in their lounge has started serving Rock Angel. Mr. Chateau Esclan, all of them are Chateau Esclan wine. But so it's really the way of the future. And so this is a sophisticated rosé as opposed to our Sula Vineyards Zinfandel rosé, which is a crowd pleaser. And we are unabashed about it. It's slightly sweet. Zin, it's an homage to the first wine that I ever tasted, which was the Sutter Home White Zinfandel was what it was called. I remember it well. Yeah, but the year was 1988, so that probably predates some of you in this room. But this is dry, touch of oak, and Provence Rosé allows and encourages you to have 5 to 10% white wine grape as well in it. This is evolving. We're trying to figure out what is the best. What's the white wine grape that they generally use in Provence?
There'll be a little bit of roll. People will use Grenache Blanc, Vermentino.
So we don't have those varietals here. So Sauvignon is something we are experimenting with a little bit. Chenin, of course. Uni Blanc is something we're experimenting with. But the base is Grenache. 95% of this wine in any given vintage is going to be Grenache. Grows beautifully in Nashik. We're so happy. And we were trying to make a red Grenache. Grenache doesn't lend itself so easily to red. It has uneven ripening of bunches. And so you'll get within the bunch, you will get berries that are totally ripe, and you'll get berries that are green, and that doesn't lend itself to a red wine. So obviously, clearly we haven't found the right region for red Grenache. But for rosé, that's not a problem. It doesn't, you just have to get to a certain minimum level, and if it likes the climate, etc., it just produces a delightful rosé. So cheers.
So this was the first wine that launched the source range. Now it's got 6 beautiful wines, and this was the very first one in 2017. I remember working with Rajeev to design the label, and we were going back and forth, and it just ended up being this beautiful, simple label. And I must say, both of us, we were a little bit, okay, is this going to work? Because is India ready for this? I remember we made 5,000 or 6,000 bottles. We loved it. We were prepared to drink all of it ourselves.
We're always prepared to drink the first vintage ourselves. So there's a lot of drinking that goes on at my bungalow in Nashik.
When this came out, I think so whenever we launch wine, it first hits our tasting room. So, it's just an incentive to get people to come and visit us. There's always something new. We launched this by around September, October, and by January of the next year, so in 4 months it was out. And since then we've struggled every year to keep up with production. What you're tasting is 2024, so it's literally been fermented and bottled I think 10 days ago. Finished fermenting end of March, and it's already out. So we had the 23 whites, we've got the 24 rosés, we'll have the 22 reds.
Always try to get the freshest vintage of white and rosé. And if you see a white or rosé for sale in India with 2017 or 2018 on the label, run. Run. There are a lot of issues. I want to add something to what Karan was saying. Mark these days of a high end of a classy rosé is extremely pale color, but then when you taste it, full flavor. So it's packed with flavor, complexity, but when you look at it, it looks so pale. In the glass, it almost looks like a white wine. And the French have a word for it, which is basically a word that they call it gris, gris or gris. Sorry, I don't know what is exactly the way that it's this thing. So it's a very pale. Sorry, gris. It's extremely pale salmon pink, tending towards almost a gray color. So I think we've just hit it with that. You do have, of course, with rosé in flint bottles in India, variations in color at some point, because if it's going to be at a retailer hanging out on the shelf for 4 or 5 months, you can betcha that the color is going to change. So that's always something so you'll see, you might have something that you bought 4 months before, 4 months later, and the color looks different. That's not anything that we can do anything about. We have learned a lot over the years on how to better protect our wines from the time they leave the winery to the time they reach the consumer, but there are certain things that we just can't control. lack of air conditioning in KSBCL depots, and a lot of the wine stores being the number one factor. So we ship it, of course, everything at our winery is cool, our finished goods is cold, we ship it cool. We've been working with KSBCL, persuading them to chill their spaces. It's not easy for a few of their Bangalore depots, they have a chilled area. We managed to do that, not in the rest of Karnataka, and it is a challenge. How many here have not tasted the Sauce Grenache Rosé yet? Quite a few, and I hope there are a lot of people here whose eyebrows are raised. Again, all of these wines are around, the Sauce range is around 1,200 bucks. So is it Indore Chardonnay. So it's crossed 1,000, but still very much in the realm of affordability. Any comments on the Sauce Rosé? Few people who like it? Yeah? Great, cheers. Cheers all. Cheers.
Cheers.
And cheers to our winemaker Gorakh sitting there. So Gorakh was the chief winemaker, was the winemaker at Domaine Sula, doing such a great job. When Karan moved up to CEO, Gorakh has now taken over as chief winemaker of Sula. Now he's moved to Nashik, but he's down in at Domaine Sula for 5 or 6 days every month. Tomorrow we're heading up there, and Domaine Sula last year had a 70% jump in the number of visitors. So just to say the way it's going. So our wine, Sula's wine tourism business, and sorry, I might be eating, maybe it's a good time for you to come back, Ruma? We're done with our first batch of wines. I'm going to tell a story here.
Yeah, please.
I'm going to tell a story about the Oberoi and Sula. So we have the general manager of Oberoi Bangalore here, Mr. Amit Khare. We've met on a few occasions. And I just want to hark back to, obviously, when I started out, I had to do all the selling, hand selling myself. And it was very difficult because half the time we didn't have all our exact technical winemaking things down. So half the time the bottle would throw tartrates, etc. And we just didn't. So I would go in there, like I'd shake up the bottle before we tasted, make sure that there were no tartrates in it, etc., etc. When we talk about the Oberoi, I managed to get a meeting with Mr. Bicky Oberoi at his place in Gurgaon. And it was him and Mr. Vikram, who's now the COO, and with great trepidation, because I had heard many things about how difficult it is to please Mr. Oberoi. I was all ready to be thrown out, no problem. We'd sent our Sauvignon Blanc over, and then I landed up there. And I was so surprised that Mr. Oberoi himself came out to meet me, because I thought I'll deal with some underlings, but he came out himself and he said, "You have done something here. This is the best white wine that we have ever tasted coming out of India, so I congratulate you." So you can imagine that was a proud moment for me. And he said, "We are going to list your wine. We're going to list your wine." And that was in the year, I think it was 2001 or something like that, so right after we started. So Taj and Oberoi listed us at about the same time. So we got a lot of support from these industry, stalwarts. But he said to me, "Your label is terrible." And I figured later that always he has to give his Kadak opinion. "Your label looks like a bottle of Kerala hooch." Now, I had never tasted Kerala hooch, so I didn't know what he was referring to, but I took it. I said, "Sir, we'll take a look at it." I didn't change it, because I figured at that point he'd already made his decision, this wine is to be listed. And since that day, since 23 years, Sula Sauvignon Blanc has been one of the top wines at the Oberoi, at every Oberoi property across the country, and is often served in the lounge, in the club lounge, etc. So that's just a little Oberoi story. And of course, yeah, it's just such a classy operation, and what I just tasted is magnificent. So compliments to the chef.
We'll meet him, or if he's here after this, yes, for sure. So wine tourism. Sula is the market leader. Again, I say a mile, but it's probably like 10 miles or 50 miles. And I remember Karan telling me that many Indians have tasted their first sip of wine at the Sula tasting room, which I thought was
Nashik,
in
absolutely.
Nashik, which I thought was really charming.
We say it's the place where more people on earth have tasted their first glass of wine than anywhere else.
That's amazing.
That's our
absolutely-
contention.
Absolutely.
That's our contention.
Amazing. And you have some numbers, Rajeev. So I want you to tell me about the numbers and also say why wine tourism is important, particularly in a country like India. To me, it's very important. And what changes are you making? Because you mentioned you have the Source, you have Beyond, and you've had it for some time. You have a crazy number of visitors. I think the numbers are something difficult to remember.
We believe again that our Nashik vineyard is the most visited vineyard on earth.
On earth.
And we've
That is
done
saying
we've done a lot of research. We've looked at China, which is the natural other place. We've looked at France. We've looked at the US, but we couldn't find anything to compare with the kinds of numbers that we rack up.
Which is amazing. So tell us about the tasting room and about tourism and how important it is for the Indian wine industry and of course for Sula.
It's all important. Without there being a beautiful place which is visually stunning, this is a pic of our vineyards. This is what you see when you come up to Sula. That's our tasting room. I know it's not the best resolution here, but you can kind of see what I'm. So you come up this way, and that's the tasting room there, and that's the view you have. That's the Source. That was our first winery, which became too small for us. Without having an amazing tasting room operation or a tourism operation, you would not have people starting to drink wine. This is the place, where it's accessible. We have a very simple wine tasting, a tour and tasting, and we really push people to do the tour and tasting. And we charge, by the way. So I want to say that last year we had about 375,000 visitors at our vineyards, 3.75 lakh. And we charge everyone who enters our vineyards if you enter on a weekend, you got to pay 1,000 rupees at the gate. If you enter on the weekday, you got to pay 600 rupees at the gate. So this is not a freebie. We found people were shooting selfie, running around our vineyard tree, and we said, we're going to stop that and we're going to charge you. But the entire amount you pay is redeemable, fully against wine and food, fully redeemable. So that's a good deal, right? So if you're really coming there to seriously learn something, taste, even if you're not drinking wine, you can get food for it. So we're not forcing you to drink wine. And then when you come in, we really persuade you to do the tour and tasting. And from being a total zero, like what is this? Like wine means wine shop, right?
Yeah.
So wine must mean blender's pride, right? I mean, that's a lot of people when they come in, that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Wine is wine shop.
Alcohol, booze.
And then suddenly they see, okay, wine comes from grapes. That's 70% of our newbies don't even know that. Oh, red wine comes from red grapes, white wine comes from this is what this tastes like, that's what that tastes like. That's the level at which we do tastings. Of course, we are working on a more VIP experience, etc. But until now, we've been very Janata, and avowedly so. So, which means, most of you know, we have of course, everybody knows what Janata is. But so we've been very Janata oriented. We want more and more people to come in, taste simply, and go away knowing that now if they want to buy a bottle, they'll know exactly what to buy. That's it. So that's it. So 375,000, again, a big growth last year over the year before. And we are really thrilled with it. And we have to grow our tourism operations constantly. We have projects on the anvil all the time. We've got Domain Sula, where we had the biggest growth. We look for acquisition opportunities now, as let's talk about being a public company, etc. There's all that beautiful story of the winemaking and all that. Now it's pretty hard-nosed. I got to sit with institutional investors and deliver growth. And so we're always looking for wineries perhaps to buy, as long as there is scope to enhance the tourism operation there. So if it's in a beautiful area, then we don't care so much about the brand, because unfortunately there are not a lot of thriving brands in the market, but there are some very nice facilities in some beautiful vineyards. And that we are now the masters of developing that. We have a blueprint, and we want to, and the more people we bring in, the more wine we're going to sell. And that's the way that it's got to work here. People don't drink wine at home. 90% or something of Indian households don't really allow alcohol at home, right? Then you got to go out to a restaurant and you're paying 700-800 rupees a glass of wine. You know, so the restaurant, and I have nothing against the restaurant because their economics is so difficult. You look at rent, you look at staff wages, etc., etc. And so we are selling the bottle for 700 rupees and the glass costs the customer 700-800 rupees. How many people are going to taste it? So, you know, it's extremely important that we do this. And, you know, we've really hit it with that. We've got new tasting rooms coming up, stores coming up, etc. Very important part of selling wine in India. And it's still tiny. If you look across at Napa or France, I mean, as a single property, we are huge. But when you take a look at the offerings, how many? There's a handful, 2, 3, 4. Most even wineries that have well-developed brands have not been able to develop their tourism offerings.
True. So maybe here again, you will be a pioneer.
We are the pioneers.
You are, I mean, you will be a pioneer.
India's first tasting room at a winery. We set up India's first vineyard resort. So everything, you know, of course there was the music festival, which was...
I was going to ask you about that because they were die-hard fans of Sula Fest and you killed it.
As you should be, as you should be.
You killed it.
Well, we brought it to life, it had its time, and COVID killed it. COVID killed it. And then we thought about whether we wanted to bring it back, and it's so difficult. Let me tell you what it means to run a music festival. It is a thankless job. Everyone sees the glamour, you see these amazing razzmatazz acts, and it's wow, it's so much fun for the attendees. And we had a lot of fun in the first few editions, but it became so bureaucratic and so corrupt.
Really?
We would not get permission to hold, we would start investing 1 year in advance. You have to get artists from all over the world, you're organizing visas and advance payments and flying them, and you got this whole thing. You get your permission in hand, official permission, 2 days before the festival.
Phew.
That's the way it works. And every single politician in the area will tell you that if you don't give my people, you don't give us 50 free passes, we're going to gherao your festival because it's un-Indian.
Yeah.
So it's un-Indian, but I want 50 passes. Then it's Indian. So then it became at the end, it was a thing full of, you know, you had the BJP camp, the Shiv Sena camp, the NCP camp, the Congress camp, and all the cool people, the good-looking people from Bombay just disappeared. So it was no fun for me personally anymore. Please don't record and this is frankly, and if anyone politically inclined here, please, I'm treating everyone with the same this thing, but this is the way it was.
Yeah.
Some guy was incensed that he couldn't have a loudspeaker Ganpati going through the town. He was shut down for that. So they gherao our festival 1 year.
Good grief.
We had to call the cops. So it's, who wants to do all that? You're trying to get people over to have a good time, have some good music, drink some good wine. So finally we said, you know what, on a good weekend in February, we are already getting pretty much almost as many paying visitors coming in as we used to get for Sula Fest. And we make a hell of a lot more money. So why give up a great weekend in February? Let's now just bring them in.
Yeah. So sustainability, because I know, and we spoke earlier, I love talking about it, and it's something which is close to your heart as well. Sula places a lot in store on sustainability, governance and environment, and just tell us briefly about your whole ethos.
So for us, it's one of our pillars, along with our own brands, premiumization, wine tourism, and all of that done keeping sustainability in mind. Today, if you look at what's going on with our planet, sustainability, if you're not today doing business sustainably, should you even be in business?
I agree.
Right? I mean, that's really, so I am very much an eco maven, you can say, and our entire focus all the time is, you know, we have metrics like you wouldn't believe, we have water meters like you wouldn't believe, we have energy consumption meters like you wouldn't believe, we have, you know, this, you can't, this is sort of whited out, blinded out, these are all solar panels, every single roof at all our facilities is fully solar. 60% of our winemaking energy comes from our own solar, which is huge. So we're talking now, we've gone past 2 megawatts of our own solar at our own things. And then we also concentrate on we measure our energy use per case produced, water use per case produced, keep focusing on bringing it down, GHG, greenhouse gas emission, that links into IWCA. So we are very determined to be one of the most sustainable producers out there. It's tough, but it's also very exhilarating, rewarding, and a great feeling, very rewarding when you manage to do it. When you see that every year you're doing it better and better, it's very rewarding. We have our own, we've not trademarked it, but we should. We have a water use hierarchy pyramid. It's a pyramid of 22 uses of the water that we pipe into our properties, starting with landscaping at the bottom, which requires no filtration, no treatment, and ending with drinking water, which requires the highest level of purity and quality. And everything that we use the water for cleaning of tanks, for cleaning of bottles, for whatever, has a place in the water hierarchy. And we set ourselves goals on where we're going to reach in the next financial year. So we keep going up, and we want to reach the level where our effluent treatment water will finally be able to purify to drinking water level. That's the holy grail. That's the holy grail. It's not easy to get there, but that's the way that we work on it.
Yeah. So that brings me to another one of, I think, again, something which I'm very excited about, which is Sula's membership of the International Wineries for Climate Action. Now, I'm not sure any of you or all of you have heard about it, but it's a huge setup which was started by the one and only Miguel A. Torres. And the whole purpose of this was to, it's a non-profit organization to combat the climate crisis. So it's got a lot of wineries from the West, including champagne houses like Lançon. It's got
very high,
very high quality. We have one Indian winery there, Asian winery there, one Indian for sure, and that is Sula. And Sula joined, I think, right at the inception or soon after. And
years later, around 3 years back, I think we joined.
Yeah. So it's very high standards to actually join and then to move up. And Sula joined as a silver member and has managed to move up to gold level. There are just a handful of wineries which have actually achieved that, which is tremendous. And so please, Rajeev, walk us through a little bit about what made you decide to join this and the challenges that you face.
You know, Mr. Miguel Torres is a real visionary. He saw it before anyone else. He said climate change is real, and vineyards and wine is in the firing line. He saw it before anyone else. He has been pushing to set this up, found some like-minded. We have always been friends, admirers of Mr. Torres. Now we are their importers as well. You know, they are constantly the most admired wine brand in the world.
In the world, yeah.
We just said we got to be a part of this. And it's to join this, you have to sign off on a net zero pledge by 2050.
Race to zero.
Race to zero. So you got to sign up to that. So it's about GHG more than water. It's more about energy, etc., etc. So for instance, now we don't buy any more fossil fuel vehicles in the company. Trucks, we got an issue, but at least passenger vehicles, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, blah blah blah, everything is EV, and everything is charged on our solar during the time of the day when the sun is beating down. So it's an amazing, it becomes a virtuous ecosystem. But I got to say, look, our prime focus is to make better and better wine.
Yeah.
And then to do that with using less and less of our planet's precious resources.
Yeah.
So that is the way that we see it, and we are thrilled with it. And it's not easy. And my people, I'm a dictator on that front, Scope 3. Scope 3, by the way, emissions has to do with your grid. And India has one of the dirtiest power grids in the world. We have one of the highest proportion of coal. I'm sure that's not a surprise to a lot of you. So no matter how much renewable we are adding,
It's still like
you saw imported coal went up 13% in India in 2023 over the previous year. So we are unfortunately dinged for that through no fault of our own, and therefore the only way for us to get to where we want to be is to get to 100% solar, which will also include battery technology, etc. But it's not easy for an Indian winery to get there because of the national power grid.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely amazing, and I think that this is something which a lot of people didn't know, so I think it was worth talking about. But we can't finish without talking about the fact which Rajeev brought up, also the fact that today Sula is a listed company, the only wine company in India that is listed. And of course, all the accompanying pushes and pulls that come with it. So has that meant certain changes for you in the short term, long term, your own personal vision? How has it affected? You did mention some.
It's been a big change. I'm not one to, I'm an impatient guy, I got to say. Generally, even though it looks like 25 years to build this company, doesn't. But, on a day-to-day basis. So sitting with, analysts and, institutional shareholders and answering the same questions all the time. And look, what are they looking for? They're looking for growth. And they're looking for quarterly growth. And wine does not lend itself, I must say, naturally to a listed markets model. It does not. And it puts us much more under the gun. And it's a delicate balance at what you do to maintain quality, keep quality, as number one, and also deliver growth and deliver it consistently quarter after quarter. It's not easy. I must say that. And, I would say that, after saying whatever I said about private equity also gives you capital to grow. At times when banks are not willing to lend to you because you don't have the balance sheet, you don't have a proven business model, that's where private equity comes in and says, hey, but there's a deal to be made there, because they also say that at some point we have the right to take you public and you have no option but to go along. So in our case, we had a private equity shareholder who was our largest shareholder at that time. They said time has come. And to their credit, they had been on board for 14 years.
Wow.
That's a long time for private equity. So we have gone public. We're doing pretty damn well so far, I got to say.
I was going to say, fantastic, well done.
But
it's not easy.
It's not easy. You got to deliver every day and every quarter. So, that's another thing altogether. Yeah. We're not going to talk anymore about public.
No more about the IPO. We are done with that. But we did talk about India being a spirits-loving country. 98%.
We are okay on
Okay, just
time,
this
right?
last
Everyone
point.
is,
I know you don't want to talk about it, Rajeev, but 98% of us
fine.
drink spirits. 1% drink wine. Tell us what we can do. Less than 1%. So that's a sad, sorry number. What can we do?
It's okay. Look, we have, that's just part of our history, colonial history. Spirits is just something that's come naturally. So yes, it's hard work getting from, I've always said we want to get to 5%. I must tell you that if in the next 5 years we get to 2%, that would be an incredible achievement. So it just makes us work all the more harder. And we always say that if we can convert 1% of our teetotalers, we have the world's largest. I think we have more teetotalers than the rest of the world put together. If you don't count the Islamic countries where alcohol is totally banned. So if we can convert 1% of the teetotalers and 1% of the whiskey drinkers to drinking wine, our job will be done. So that's what we've set out on. Sometimes you feel it's thankless, but it's also a great target to have. But that whole thing about, can't do wine in India, wine doesn't go with Indian food, wine, that's starting to be debunked little by little, right?
As we have
that's
seen.
That's starting to be debunked. And so it's going to take time. And wine tourism is definitely a part of it.
I agree.
Taxes are a big issue.
Yeah.
Taxes, the way the Indian Alcobev tax structure is set up, it forces you to make Alcobev out of the cheapest throwaway raw material that there is.
Yeah.
That's what the tax structure really pushes you to do, and to make massive volumes. If you're not doing massive volumes, you can't grow. So, you had this whole craft thing in India, but it's stuck. It was so exciting. Everybody was starting a craft spirit, not a craft wine. I mean, Source was our craft wine, but we're an incumbent. Craft spirit, craft beer, it's all a little bit stuck right now. The big boys fight back with the hand in glove with the state governments, who say that if you want to have a wine label out there, you got to pay 1 lakh per year to the state before you sell a single bottle for the privilege of registering your label. That's just some of the stuff that you have to do.
It's absolutely crazy.
So you can imagine how that hurts also some of the smaller producers, etc.
Absolutely. It is.
But yes, India is a spirits country. That's going to take a long time to change. It's a whiskey country, becoming more and more every day a whiskey country. But we are doing our bit, and we are happy with the progress we've made so far. But there's a long battle ahead.
On that happy note, or not so happy note, but potentially happy note, I'm going to stop the interview, but I will call Karan back to lead us through the next level, next set of wines with Rajeev. And
so I think we're going to do reds, yes?
Yeah. So welcome back, Karan.
Cabernet, cool nights during the growing season, and you get a green character. And that was something we were always struggling with. And it's only recently, really, you would say that in the last 3 or 4 years that we've managed, I would say that we've managed to banish the green character, and we took all the Nashik Cabernet out. And now it's Solapur, Sangli, and Karnataka. But this Syrah has always been our first love. It loves Nashik. Look at that color, beautiful, all natural. Let's take. You should get a little bit of that peppery character of Syrah. And you see your tasting note on the coaster here, the elegant and perfumed. And you'll note it, Syrah is a much more rounded wine, softer wine profile than Cabernet. So you'll note with Cabernet you have more structure. This one is a little bit more round. We've got what give a little bit in terms of winemaking notes. And again, gold in the Paris Wine Cup 2021.
Absolutely. Please. So, one of the things we do with this, so earlier, let me step back. This was the first Rasa that we ever did. 2007 was the first vintage. Back then it was called the Rasa Shiraz. And a few years ago, when we rebranded and relaunched Rasa and didn't have the Sula logo anymore, it became the Rasa Syrah, because our vision for this wine was to be a bit more elegant. And that's exactly, to take on from what Rajeev said, Nashik gives you Syrah. And the same grape grown in South Maharashtra or even in Karnataka has more of a Shiraz-like expression. So the wine people here in the room completely, I'm sure, understand what I'm saying when I say that. And we decided to ferment it with Viognier because we just wanted to put the perfume of the Viognier.
That's again doffing our hat to the French. That's the way they do it in the Rhone region. They always co-ferment Syrah with 5-10% Viognier.
Absolutely. And it's just taken the wine to another level. And now we think the Rasa Syrahs will easily age for over a decade. And they just keep getting better with time. We have a back catalogue that we refer to at times in the winery, and even the 2007 still drinks reasonably well, and we're very excited to see what these vintages now, when we know so much more and are doing things so much better, how they really evolve in the next decade, because they for sure will.
So I'm going to say a word about Syrah versus Shiraz, because you said that most people here will have some idea, but maybe some people don't. Syrah and Shiraz are the same grape, but Shiraz is a name made really famous by Australia, and Syrah is the original French name. Though, of course, way back they say all these grapes came from Shiraz in Iran, so we don't know about that. But so Syrah denotes something much different than Shiraz. a more elegant style. Shiraz is a big, in-your-face style. It's often a 15% alcohol wine. That's something that personally we are not big fans of. When we talk about elegant, we're talking about a little bit more restrained in terms of alcohol level. 15% has sort of had its time. It's very much big Aussie red. I mean, some of the big Napa cabs are still very much, 1 kg bottle and 15% alcohol, Robert Parker, etc., etc. But things are changing a lot now, and people are looking for wines made with a little bit more restraint, more elegance. And it's not, you don't want to drink one glass and be done for the night, which is what a 15% wine will do to a lot of us. So here we're talking about something that's a shade below 14. We're talking about a more Syrah style. We also did some research and we found out something very interesting, that if you call the wine Syrah instead of Shiraz, there's a 20% price premium. This is truth. I'm revealing trade secrets. But therefore, so we have French oak.
Yeah.
Again, so we're going the French way. I mean, you probably all will realize I haven't said anything about Italy or anything like that. I mean, we have a Riesling which pays tribute to Germany, but
yes,
our benchmark is France. It is, even though our first winemaker was Californian, and therefore our Sula range was very much with a Californian sort of and a little bit easier drinking. But in terms of these wines, France is the benchmark. That's nothing that I've ever said before, that we've said before.
Yes.
But ultimately, when we talk about our wines, we're always talking about France. I would say that France, I don't know if the Italian Consul General is here, but in terms of, well, then I'm going to say something. That in terms of the greatest, apart from the Sangiovese grape, obviously the Nebbiolo Sangiovese that are, totally Italian, the greatest examples of most of the world's great grapes still come down to French examples. So that's what we always have in mind when we are painting this. And therefore you have the French oak here.
yes,
And Viognier is another wine which we love, which unfortunately, I think India, just pronouncing Viognier is always an issue for most people, and I think that really lets it down. I don't know what else we could have done a trademarked new name, VG or something.
thank you.
Yeah, really, because it's so beautiful, perfumed, we love it. It grows wonderfully in Nashik, but our Viognier has never really taken off. But where it's really helped us is as a blender with some of these top-end reds, and it brings down the wild. Sometimes Shiraz can have a slightly wild character, and Viognier brings a more elegance to it and calms down that wild character. How many people here have not tasted the Rasa Syrah? Still a few.
Oh, wow.
Because this wine has been around for 15 years now.
Yep.
We went with, we had a black label earlier that didn't exactly do it for us. And we went with a Burgundy label expert, and this was their creation, and we were looking for something a little bit more classic and French. And so we went with this, and there are certain, all the elements do refer to something. So you have a number of different elements. You have the moon there, which is becoming so important in terms of winemaking with reference to the moon, etc. So there you go. And what's the next wine we're going to do?
So we have the Rasa Cabernet. So this is our flagship red, the king of red wines. We were, in a way, one of the Indian winery that was the last to the Cabernet party, but I think we've come and we've taken over the party. The Rasa Cabernet is, I can say without a doubt, the best Cabernet Sauvignon being made in India today, and it is the only Indian wine to have won a gold medal at the Global Cabernet Sauvignon Masters. So it's something we're very, very proud of. It's the 2022 vintage.
That's a real knockout award, and I want to congratulate our winemakers for that, because the Global Cabernet Sauvignon Masters is really something. It's just Cabernet, and for an Indian wine to win a gold, I mean, you should see the kind of company that we are in that is really something. So you can Google that, Drinks Business Global Cabernet Masters, and you'll see the Rasa Cab up there, and it's something definitely that is really. And so, you're missing the green notes. I was talking about it.
Yes.
And you can tell this is a much more structured wine. You can feel that backbone of oak. You were talking about the Syrah being possible to age it long, but the Rasa Cabernet, I would
Absolutely.
say, can age even longer. 10 years put down. But now there's a little point I want to tell you, this whole thing about aging wines, you go to Paris and you'll see that all these beautiful buildings, they have cellars at the bottom, right? And where the temperature is 15 degrees through the year. And so you can buy your stock and it can be aged, and you'll be tasting your father's wines from 25 years ago, 30. We don't have that in India. We got to understand something, that in India it's a small, teeny-meeny number of people who actually can collect wine and store. Generally, you don't have space in your fridge, then you need to have a wine cooler, etc., etc. I don't know how many of you know that 95% of the world's wine is bought and consumed in 48 hours. So just to put things in perspective, this whole collection and en primeur and all of that is a tiny fraction, a very high value, but a tiny fraction of the wine world when it comes to volumes of wine. Mostly, mostly in the UK, you stop off at Marks and Spencer on your way home and you get the meal deal, right, which has the bottle of wine along, and you quaff it off that night. That's really what a lot of the wine consumption in the world is today. It's a rare thing where you're buying stuff and laying it down. So when we talk about the laying down of wine, and this is going to taste great after, but ultimately things have changed a lot. Even if you talk about the Grand Crus, etc., they are making them much more accessible to drink today or drink in a couple of years. Earlier, it would be that, wow, taste this, 1982 or 1945 or whatever. Now, who the hell has access to 1982 and 1945, right? And it's becoming, all of us and our attention spans. Is there anybody here whose attention span has increased over the last 2 years? I can give you the answer for myself, right? So no, all our attention spans have decreased, and so has our patience with these kinds of things. So we make wines that will age, but what I would like to say is that they leap out at you even immediately. That's what we're looking for. In India, wines age a lot faster than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are, privileged enough to have aging facilities in Paris and London, hey, great for you. But for the rest of us, most of us, here, if you say this wine's going to age for 20 years, you better drink it in 4 or 5 years in India. So, how many vote for the Rasa Syrah as compared to the Rasa Cabernet? Few more for the Cabernet.
So, as part of the rebranding of Rasa, we tied it into our sustainability efforts, and we were very conscious of the fact that these were some of the few bottles that we were importing. The Rasa bottles earlier were imported. We started doing them locally, and we brought down the weight. We don't want heavy bottles. So now when you pick up a bottle of Rasa, it's a local Indian bottle and a lightweight bottle, and that's again something just where we tie it into the wine we make. And it's part of our philosophy. No heavy glass bottles for us.
Let's start pouring the last wine, so we will wrap things out. Yes, it's a very good point. When you talk about sustainability, it's not only solar power, etc. It's about localizing bottle procurement, packaging material procurement. I'm really happy to say, so about 7 years ago, we were buying maybe 50% of our bottles from China. And then we made a conscious effort, as did a lot of Indian businesses, with changing that paradigm. And I'm very happy to say today, 99% of our bottles are bought from Indian bottle producers. And we are constantly working with them, collaborating with them to also bring down the weight, because that's again, one of the biggest carbon footprints of wine production is the bottle is shipping the bottles from, point to point. Yeah, we are down to 450 grams each, below 450 grams. That's the holy grail. So again, obviously, I think it hasn't been said, obviously all of you would be knowing it. Every single grape that goes into every single one of these wines is grown here in India. There is no imported bulk wine, etc., that goes into. No, it's important to say, because remember when we started with Satori 24 years ago, there was imported bulk wine in there. And today, every single one of these wines is 100% grown here, and it has been a tremendous boon for the grape farmers of India. It's been a huge economic boom and boon for especially the grape growers of Western Maharashtra, etc., and it's one of the reasons why the government is so really backs us, because it is something that's bringing much higher production or value per acre than pretty much any other crop. I'm not referring to saffron or something like that, but pretty much any other crop. And so it's really important in these days when it's not so easy for agriculturists across the world. It's a struggle with climate change, etc. Wine in India is one of the bright spots. It's teeny meeny still, tiny, but growing very nicely, and very pleased to say that wine growers here would make something like 3 times as much for a kilo of wine grapes than for a kilo of table grapes. So that's the kind of difference in return. So we're going to close with a real, in this case we can say crowd pleaser Ayushi. In the case of that's Ayushi at the back there, she's in charge of our tastings and experiences here in Bangalore, and she's helped Ruma and the Oberoi team along with a couple others, to put the evening together. Thank you. We come to a wine which is a little out of keeping with the rest of the sauce series, and this is our sauce Moscato. And Moscato, those of you who know this wine, this is an Italian originally wine grape. Well, I'm not 100% sure of that, but made famous in the region of Asti in Italy. And this is a delightful floral perfumed grape, and it's sweet. So it's unabashedly sweet. That's the way you make this wine. So this is an homage to Italy, to Asti. It's India's first Moscato. A lot of the wines, the Grenache Rosé that we've done, that's India's first Grenache Rosé, etc., etc. A lot of the wines that we do are made for the first time here in India. So cheers. So unabashedly sweet, but lovely, not cloyingly sweet, I would hope, and very low alcohol. So the alcohol on this 8.8% on the label, 8.5% says the winemaker. And so it's, if you go out for a celebration, each of you should be able to quaff a bottle a night. And I want to talk about our sparkling wines to wrap up. We are the first in India to make sparkling wines in the Prosecco method. So when we started out making wine, we were going for the traditional method, which is the original champagne method, méthode champenoise, méthode traditionnelle. But we quickly figured out that there's no premium for that method in India. People are looking, in fact, for fresh, light, and fruity. So there's a bit of an upfront expense to Prosecco method. You got to invest in expensive pressure tanks, etc., etc. But then you can move it through much faster. So just to give you an example, from harvest to release, traditional method wine, 18 months. Prosecco method, 3 months. That's cash. And in the days of 8-9% interest rates, cash is king. And people love, everybody has reacted so well, welcomed the Prosecco method here. You know that Prosecco today is selling, I don't know, as many bottles as champagne or whatever. It's gone. The success story in India, in sparkling wine in the world of the last decade, has been Prosecco. So that's something that we've hitched onto, and we have a full Prosecco method wine set up, and very happy with it. Yes, I want to say that, have we missed anything, or that brings us to the end of our formal tasting? Thanks all, you've been a brilliant audience. Cheers, cheers. So we're going to have a little Q&A and then mingle, and those of you who need to get going, I know please feel free.
So who has a question? Please identify yourself.
Yeah, maybe somebody can support with the mic, support madam.
Yeah, I have met Rajeev. So, hi Rajeev, this is Sajay and Sajay Singh. The question that I have is that you're bringing different grapes into India, and that's very good. The region, the grapes that I'm very interested in, I would like to get your views on, are the old wines, as they call them, the Moldova, the Georgia, the Romania, a lot of wines from that region, which are the grapes that most people don't even know exist. What about those grapes? It's just that I've been traveling in that region a lot, and those grapes are maybe the mother of many of the grapes that we have, or the wines that we have. But they're fabulous grapes, and I was just wondering, keeping, well, I can't comment on the terroir, but keeping just the temperature and the overall climate in mind, it's possible that you could grow them here, and they're just such small batches and fabulous wines there. So any views on that?
So that's a great question. We had this question 20 years ago. What's the kind of wine we're going to grow? Should we look for a native Indian variety? Was there, you hear about wine being drunk in Mughal times or whatever. So, what was that wine they were drinking? What was the thing? And we looked at it and we said, we would have to do two jobs. One, we would have to make good wine. And the second, we would have to educate everyone on what this, Arkavati, or I don't even know what the Moldovan varieties is. Whereas if we went the way of the classic wine varieties, you don't have to tell everyone what is a Cabernet Sauvignon, what is a Sauvignon Blanc, what is a Chenin Blanc. That part of the job is done for you. And so we took a call way back then that we were going to stick to the superstars, to the international superstars, and we were going to eschew lesser known varieties. Having said that, of course, there's a lot of amazing stuff, and even you have lesser known varieties that are becoming superstars. So today you have, for instance, Albarino from the north of Spain, which is very little known here, and probably there's maybe one Albarino being even imported into India. But when I go to Spain, I only drink Albarino. I don't drink Chardonnay, for example. But again, to bring it in, to educate, it's a big job. So perhaps there's somebody else who wants to put in this sort of, labor of passion and do that. And there's lots of scope for everyone to do that. We have decided we're going to stick to the superstars, Cabernet, Syrah, Grenache, Sauvignon, Chardonnay, etc., what have you. That's what we're going to stick with. Plus, in terms of getting planting material and all of that, it's so much easier. To deal with a nursery in Moldova, virus. Here we deal with the world's great nurseries, which are virus-free certified. You have to do that in order to bring the thing in. And they deal with the top superstars. So that's the way it works.
Yes,
Abhijit, I'm so happy to see you here today. We did probably our first ever, tasting event in Bangalore with, I think, Bangalore Wine Club. It was.
No. So just to let you know, yes, a small story of my association with Sula. I was working with the park at that point in time, and Rajeev and Ajit Saldana, we arrived together with a few cases of wine, and that is how we did the launch of Sula at Ibar. So that was my connection with Sula.
There we go. We launched Sula in Bangalore at High Bar.
Now I have a question for you.
And we did some nice tastings at your restaurant in.
We did multiple tastings and everything after that, but that was the beginning. And it was interesting that it was done at Ibar and not at a restaurant.
Yeah, Ibar. Yeah.
Yes, always. So also I wanted to ask you a question. So the world of wines. What is it that you are doing unique in the future to make Sula stand out amongst the wines of the world?
So we're winning lots of medals. But in terms of, unique, look, I think our job now is to make wines here better and better and to push the wine tourism experience. I got to say that I'm not looking right now at reinventing the wheel. Right now, what is my goal? We don't have a Merlot in the range. It's a big hole. We started our red wine program with Satori Merlot, which was imported Merlot at that time. And Merlot has not been easy to grow here. So Merlot is a huge focus for us. Well, I'm revealing trade secrets here. Is it okay? We're a public company now. I'm going to throw this question out to the crowd. If you talk about white wine varieties, can anyone name a white wine that they really like that Sula doesn't produce? Yes. Oh, okay, yes.
That's Patrick and he's Austrian.
So Gruner Veltliner, fantastic variety, will be on our radar at some point. There's another wine today that sells 10 times as much white wine as Gruner Veltliner and is not in our palette. I'm talking about a wine called Pinot Grigio. Most of you here have heard of it. Sula doesn't have a Pinot Grigio. It's a hole in our portfolio. So right now, we're playing a little bit of catch up and a little bit of making sure that we have a whole portfolio there. In terms of unique, we looked at that Arkavati and all, we decided we're not going to do that right now. I would say our wine tourism is a unique model. Who else in the world has 4 lakh people coming in and it's a production line in terms of like tours and tastings and all. So that's where the uniqueness comes in. A wine tourism operation unlike anything the world has seen. Sula Fest was unlike. Now we're a little bit more just, we've got a few, we see where are our holes, we need to fill them. Thanks for a great question though. Yes. You can even speak loudly if you have this thing without. Yeah, then use the mic.
I have so many questions, I'm trying to ask one. But before I ask a question, I want to tell you a story, which I learned from Alo. I think when he started the Bangalore Wine Club, he tells me that it's a part of our trivia question at the club, you landed up at one of these initial wine club dinners with bottles of wines for Sula, which you were launching in Bangalore at that time.
Was that the start of the Bangalore Wine Club? So it was where? The Bangalore?
No, it was at Nina Kanjira's house.
Okay.
So that was a great story and none of us really want to write these.
So I was part of the first Bangalore Wine Club night. All right, there we go. Lots of history. I mean, some of the, people say I need to write a book and that's a difficult one, I know.
So, you asked the question as to what is a white wine that you're not making, but I also want to say that Riesling, which is, we're talking about different wines today, but Riesling is one of my favorites. There are not too many Indian winemakers make a Riesling, and I actually have friends who are coming from Bombay get it because we don't get it very easily here, not all the time. So.
Winemaker, did you hear that? We're very proud of our Sula Riesling. Again, we were the pioneers of Riesling in India. Everyone said it can't be done. Cool climate grape. It comes from some of the coolest regions of Europe, Alsace and the Moselle. North Europe basically we are talking about, but grows beautifully here. And the reason for that is because we do a very low alcohol restrained one. If we tried to go up in alcohol, the wine would fall, the grape would fall apart in India. And because we do it at about 11%, 10.5, 11, we're able to do that here. But so you've tasted our Sula Riesling.
Absolutely. It's always there in my wine collection.
Thank you. What's the question? Yeah.
So, I bought Sula stock and made some money, then I lost a lot of money.
Oh.
Now it's at a very good price, should I buy it?
Sebi, are you watching? So this is one thing that I can't comment on. I will only say that ours is not a stock where if you're looking to make money in a day and in a week and a month, we are not those guys. But if you believe in the wine story, for the long term, surely we should be on your radar. But that's all I'm going to speak in terms of stock buying and selling. Yeah, please help us. Please help us. Yes.
Rajeev and Karan, thank you very much. I want to thank you for a particular thing which happened in the past, and I would like to ask a question also. First, let me thank you. We came 2 years back to Nashik and got a whole group of Rotarians. For the Rotarian Wine Fellowship.
I remember.
And before that, even thank you. With the COVID time, we had this Sula Vineyards, which was, we had events which were virtual events.
Oh yes,
Come in. So, great thank you to you for coming during the COVID time, and Karan for looking after us when we came to Nashik. And it was historic because we had a capital here in Bangalore, and we started one in Bombay, and it all happened with your wines in Nashik and the Taj of there. So thank you very much for all the support there.
Any question?
Yeah, the question is, if you have 2,000 acres of acreage under cultivation of vines.
Sula, now it's important to understand the model that 95% of that acreage, it's not owned by us. It's farmers, it's individual farmers with an average holding size of no more than 7 or 8 acres. We're talking 3 hectares is our average wine grape farm size. So it's very much like, you can say, a cooperative model, but please go on. We ourselves have about 250 acres on which we grow basically Rasa grapes, but otherwise the other 2,600 or whatever it is all small holdings.
When it comes to vintages and terroirs, and identifying terroirs and vintages for finally the labels which have been bottled, how are you able to control that with such a large acreage?
There's a lot of work that goes into that. There's a lot of work that goes into that. We have a big viticultural team, extension team that works with all of these growers, tells them exactly how we want to do it. There's tons of air, so we give them the planting material. We decide when the pruning should happen. We have people going out and doing sampling to decide when is the right time to do the picking. Ultimately, when it all comes in, there's some big numbers at play that things sort of even out when you get grapes from here and there and this and that. And we don't have the kind of vintage variation that you see in, for instance, Europe. We have not, though we are such a warm country, grapes in India have not been impacted yet by climate change to the extent they have been in Europe. Europe is really struggling because they have seasons, and the seasons are going a bit crazy. We don't have seasons. We have hot and wet. That's pretty much it, right? So it's going to go, maybe you have a little bit less monsoon or a little bit, but you don't have frost, etc. So we don't have to worry so much about vintage variation. We are not great and terrible. We are generally pretty good. That's the way it works out. Thank you. I want to say one thing before we move on, that in terms of wine tourism, very happy to announce that now Indigo has announced a Bangalore-Nashik direct non-stop flight from October 1. So some great news. Yeah. And Nashik, today we have 2 airports. We have Nashik Airport and we have Shirdi Airport. And the number of flights is going up. So Shirdi is also very important to a lot of people. We help with the wine and shrine tour. We have people in our team who can organize some sort of special darshan privileges. Your only question is whether you do Shirdi shrine first and then wine, or wine first and then shrine. Most people do shrine and wine. But we have, a beautiful, vineyard, a campus. It's spread out. We have multiple properties. We have lakesides. We have this and that, and it is catered towards people who love their wine. So we would love to welcome any of you who wants to come. And once you're going to have this direct flight, that's not so far away. Yeah, October 1.
But you have a tie-up with Indigo, right? You had a tie-up.
We do, but the tie-up is that if you fly Indigo, you'll get a tasting for free, which you all don't have to worry about. Now we are friends, So you'll get anyway you're tasting from. So you can even fly through Bombay. Please, you have a question over here?
Ganga has a question first.
Yes, Ganga.
Ganga is the manager of a wine bar called Wine in Progress.
Okay, wonderful.
That's the newest wine bar in the city at the moment. First of all, thank you so much.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. I'm receiving a lot of tests. So yeah, but not about me. First of all, thank you so much, Rajeev, Karan, and Ms. Ruma here for absolutely insightful evening that we had. As much as you tapped upon various topics like sustainability, great varieties of production, how we started off, and how much of the angle is now for the Indian market. But for people, the upcoming generation who are still interested in winemaking, what is the thing, the advice that you want to give it to young winemakers or people who are planning to get into winemaking for sure?
Okay. Ruma, I guess this is going to be the last question because probably, or we can even, one or two of the questions can happen while we are mingling also.
Yes, definitely the food awaits.
What time were we supposed to close?
We were.
9:30? Oh no, that's like from Indian point of view, that's like totally fine. Huh? We can stretch for another 5 minutes. So Ganga, is it Ganga? First, thank you for opening a wine bar, for taking the plunge, for, somebody said you're with a 5-star hotel or whatever with hospital, I mean, like fantastic, and we will be happy to support you in whichever way we can. In terms of, we have a lot to work with if you want to open a wine bar. If you want to get into winemaking, Karan, I'm going to give
I think it's an exciting period, new and upcoming. Nobody there thought they would be a winemaker. I hadn't thought that. It is a small industry. I think curiosity and appreciation of flavors within our area. We don't have so many people who actually train as winemakers. A lot of them started off as microbiologists or food science, and then sort of learn on the job. But the opportunity for lots of winemakers in India will come when we get that 1% of consumption up to 2% of consumption. When there's a lot more wine being made in India and drunk in India, that's when it'll happen. I think at this point of time, what's really needed from an education point of view is actually more people to go out and grow grapes. Because today nobody wants to grow grapes.
and open wine bars. We have a lot of good advice and support for those who open wine bars.
Wine in Progress, people who don't know, it's just a 14-seater wine bar. Wine in Progress, that's the name of the wine bar. It's at the courtyard. The courtyard community, Double Road, Richmond Circle, City.
I hope you have some of the wines you tasted tonight on the list.
Sula, the source rosé, for which I was just coming to that, not a question, but more like a comment and a feedback. But then people absolutely love source rosé, and the first time, every time I tell people this is not an international wine, it's an Indian wine because of the label and the look, firstly, and obviously the taste. So people get really surprised by this,
You don't say this is from Provence.
Try it next time for sure. And so we were there. So I'll have to give it to Sula for being that Indian winery and the entire, taking that entire wine scene to the stake, because we were there for the last monsoon tasting where you headed the tasting again, led by Karan. We did not get the time to interact personally, but then how Sula is constantly on the go, tasting wines, curating new wines, and the great varieties obviously which a lot of people would be interested on to have that eye on for.
Great. I want to tell everyone we have not planted Ganga in the crowd. These are totally her comments. And we've answered your winemaking question. Anything else? Otherwise we're going to move on and we'll interact a little bit more after. So I think we have Nati who has one last.
Then we're going to mingle and we're going to be here to eat and drink and
Rajeev, so quick experience and then my question. So when you launched the Indori Reserve, it was not available in Bangalore, so I had my office in Pune, buy 4 cases and somebody used to carry it for me, right? So great wine, I used to serve it, I used to gift it, and then the second lot of 3 cases, I had to pour it down the drain, right? So
How many years ago was this?
I don't know, whenever you launch into the reserve, okay? So
I obviously haven't started in the club.
so the fact is this, that this evening I think one of my favorites is the cancer. So what is it that you have done in your production process so that my next case, the case after that, the case after that, are all the same?
Really good question. First, I'm sorry about your experience from back then. We're talking about, I guess 2003 was our first Dindori. We've done a lot. So one of the things, for example, which we realized, which is very pertinent, I'm going to be very specific to Dindori Reserve and the rest of the Reds, was our barrel hygiene program. Clean barrels, okay? Sounds so simple and obviously so clear. But the fact of the matter is that there is a school of thought in winemaking where it's okay for barrels to go a little, as we call it, funky. There are all sorts of bacteria that can grow, Brettanomyces, etc. But in India, they multiply faster. And so we realized that we have to painstakingly taste every single barrel a couple times in the progression. And if something is not up to the mark, what happens is if something is going wrong in one of the barrels, and remember, wine is a living thing. Huh? It's not like spirits where you make it and nothing happens after that. With wine, it's evolving. So, and with a little exposure to air, things go bad. And if you put that one bad barrel into a batch of 1,000 barrels, that badness is going to multiply. So we really worked hard on improving our barrel hygiene. That's just one, of 50 things we did. But that's one thing that in the case of Dindori Reserve has really helped. That just much more emphasis on barrel maintenance, barrel sanitation, cleaning, using ozone or what have you, whatever, and realizing how important it is to get there. So we would do everything 95% fine, and that one bad barrel would spoil the whole batch, and it would be discernible. And it's something we learned, and we had a few vintages where we did have issues like that. I'll be frank with that. Live and learn.
Okay, so I think we're done with the questions. Just before we wind up,
I'm really enjoying the food and the accompaniments.
So we're going to go out and in the bar will be open. You can have all the wines you tasted as well as the fantastic food curated by Chef Areva. I just wanted to say how great it was to have you here, Rajeev. Everybody who I mingled with us told me, somebody said they learned more about not just Sula, but about a lot of things than they have in so long. So I think it was fantastic.
We have a lot of wisdom to share.
Fantastic. Keep sharing it. Please come back more often.
Absolutely.
Thank you to the whole Sula team, Karan and Gaurav, and of course the Bangalore team, Ayushi. Fantastic job done. I think thank you so much to the Oberoi. They have done a fabulous job today.
Amit, I hope you had a good time here this evening. Good. Ruma, may I also say thank you to you, I have my mic here, for putting this all together, and I don't think it could have been done better. And to Ruma. I would love for everyone to go out and share, the message that they got tonight about what's going on with Indian wine, how it's getting better and better, what we're up to. Please go and spread and enjoy lots of what we're producing 1.5 hours outside your city at Domain Sula. So whatever we drank tonight is local production. There we go. Thanks to my team. Cheers, Ayushi, Gorak, Karan, rest.